My name is Elizabeth Olsen. I'm playing Zoe in Kodachrome. I think every character is in a big point of transition, like we all are constantly in our everyday lives. And she's kind of stuck, and she's taking care of this old man who's become like a surrogate father, almost husband for her. And she spends all of her energy being a caregiver, so she can avoid thinking about herself. And this journey kind of forces her to realize that everything has an end, and everything that's good or bad, it all renews itself continually. So she chooses to take the next trajectory on the next part of her journey at the end of the movie. Well, I think because Ben has such a large personality, I actually think it's something that is very entertaining for her as well. And it also, I think she really respects his legacy as an artist. And they have developed a codependency on one another. It's a very funny relationship between an older man and a younger woman. But I think they get on really well. And Ed and I, who plays Ben, he and I have continued to try and find moments that are not scripted, or make moments that are scripted as connected as possible, so that you can notice that they have such a easy enjoyment in one another's company. And she defends him for a lot of nasty things that he says and does, but she eventually draws the line, and kind of stands up for her own beliefs despite him being sick. I think the first thing I was attracted to was Zoe and her forwardness, her abrasiveness. I enjoy that aspect of her. And then I learned more about Ed and Jason being involved, and they both sounded like a funny duo to hang out with. And then I saw Mark's work and met with Mark. And then Mark, from the beginning, because we've been talking about this for a while now, he was very open to collaboration and changes. And I had a few things that I wanted to change, so I met with him and Jonathan. And Jonathan was really open to it because he's had the script around for a very long time. So he himself even thought that some things were left over from earlier drafts, and so we just kind of updated it a bit for me, and we made certain decisions within the script. Instead of her being cheated on, she was the one who cheated on her husband, because we thought that would be more interesting for someone who's a self-sabotager in a way. So it was really collaborative, and it was just the whole, that all feeling exciting to just, I don't know, also just to like be in scenes where you just talk and listen. And I really wanted to sing at a bar with Jason, so that was fun. And we couldn't have been happier that we chose live, because that's one of my favorite songs to sing in the car, so. So that's good. I didn't even know the Bon Jovi song that they referenced, and then it was changed to Lightning Crashes, and all my friends know that I'm a big kid of the 90s, so that made me happy.
Very interesting individual.
Thanks. I'll take that as a compliment.
No, yes, it was intended that way, which is good. No.
You have to have some overlap with every character, even if you're playing, a full antagonist. So I think, and you have to, and even if someone else wouldn't read it like that, you inherently do, because it is you are making an interpretation of something that you're going to put your body into. And I think a lot of that was already written by Jonathan. You kind of need her to be that in order for it to also not offend people with the age difference between her and Matt. And I think that was something Jonathan was worried about. So she has to be an old soul, hopefully, and wise, and can hold her own ground. I feel very comfortable with difficult men, with men who have who maybe are like Ben, like men who are like Ben, my dad's best friend, who's passed now, Big Bill, was like this. No one really. He was just like the funniest, goofiest dude, but he scared a lot of people, and I guess I was just kind of raised with those kinds of older men, and I enjoy it, and I find it funny, and it doesn't offend me. So a lot of that, when reading the script, I understood that it's not the weirdest thing for Zoe to be comfortable with someone like Ben, because I'm comfortable with someone like Ben. So I get it. He and I have talked about it quite a bit together. That even if there is jealousy when he starts with Matt, when he starts to think that something happens between us, and where does that jealousy come from? And it's an odd, funny dynamic, but it is also very much father-daughter. Zoe's lost her father at a pretty young age, and Ben missed out on being the good one. So they're both kind of fulfilling each other's gaps. Because Matt thinks he's incapable of being that kind of a man, being a father to someone. So it's easier for him to make assumptions at the beginning, as he does, that it's something beyond that. And I think I'm curious to see how that all plays together, because we did those scenes after Jason and I did all of our fun scenes together, like all the playful ones where we get to know each other, and then the intimacy. And then we did the scenes where we're distant at the beginning of the movie, so I'm curious to see if we did that okay. We meet Zoe in Matt's office. She lets herself in and tries to convince him to come on the road trip. And she is kind of unrelenting and was able to, I think, poke him in a way that made him feel like he would regret it if he didn't try and make one last attempt with his father before he died. That would be great. Yeah, if Ben. The funny thing is, though, is he constantly self-contradicts himself. That was redundant, but you can see that he makes some moves forward in regards to his fatherliness with Matt, and then he just retracts it all by being mean and angry. But you can see that he wants to be able to be accepted by him for who he is, because he's accepted who he is, and he wants Matt to see him beyond this abandoning father. I think he had Zoe Deschanel in his head or something when he wrote it. So I think just by inherently me being in it, I'm changed. I'm not as I'm quirky and weird, but she's different. We're different quirks. And I think Jonathan had a quirkier version or something. Why? What did Jonathan say? I think I remember when we were doing edits and I was giving him my own character notes. There are certain times where she just sounded really ignorant to me. And if you're going to have a young woman with two men, please don't make her seem like the ignorant one. She can be. She is. She's everyone's always trying to be a better version of themselves. Or hopefully. But she often was like, "What's a record?" And I was like, no. She has to know what a record is. She has to have seen a cassette tape before. She's it would just be so weird if she didn't. Because she's not born in the 90s or the 2000s or whatever. She's born in the 80s. It's not it. So there are just certain things like that where I just did not want her to come across as the young one who makes everyone else feel old, or that she seems like an ignorant generation. That was very important to me.
Living with them both at the same time.
I think what's the funny part of the dynamic is even though Matt and Ben are father and son, Matt at the beginning feels like the third wheel to my and Ben's relationship. He should feel like odd man out. And then eventually that turns on itself, and Ben starts to feel like the third wheel and the odd man out because of the two storylines changing as we go, or really just connecting with Matt. And then when it does all collide, it also brings up changes that she knows she needs to make, and she's never been able to get back into her life and making those changes. Or not, you can't just make a change, but to at least not avoid it. I don't know. That's a hard question for me to answer, but I think she gives off the assumption that she's very comfortable in her skin, when really that's like the shell that she uses in order to get by. Is just this kind of like confident, easygoing person who is always constantly loving to analyze other people and take the attention off herself. That's why she's a good caretaker. That's why she's good at probing Matt to talk about his past. Yet she never really takes that down, takes like her own shield down. But she's very good at disarming other people. For me, it's almost like, might sound so weird, but like acting's kind of like a form of meditation, because you get to kind of lose the 90% recycled thought that you have during your day, and you get to just focus on dialogue you have to say while analyzing other people's responses or trying to play off one another spontaneously in the moment. And when you're being semi-successful at it and you do lose those thoughts, you're just present. And I think that to me is what make-believe is you get lost in your imagination of a scene or of a game with rules, and you believe the rules. And I really love that aspect of it.
When did you figure out you liked and you wanted to act?
It was my child hobby from when I was 5, and that's all my friends and I did. And then I didn't want to continue thinking that would be a career path, because I'm from Los Angeles, and I know better. But I then had a theater teacher in high school who was very influential, because he taught me about the theater and acting as like a history, and it became more academic to me and something more tangible than Hollywood, because I was always offended by that term, even though that's what it's called. But growing up there, you're always like, Hollywood, it's Los Angeles, it's a city of an industry. There are lots of cities that have industries. And then I went, and then I just focused on the studying aspect. And the fun thing is any other thing you want to study only helps. So it's like you're a constant student of the world. I take this job really seriously, because it's something I love to do, and I feel privileged to do it. But at the same time, I don't think it can change aspects of people in the world, but I don't think of it as like, I don't think there's like a pyramid of people. And I think that this celebrity praise is so weird in our culture, which is why Trump is running for president. And so I care a lot about what we do, but it's also fun. It shouldn't be I don't know, it's become something strange. He's horrible. Like, what if someone actually said that? He's been, like I said at the beginning, he's been so collaborative, which I really appreciated, really available. He's been really available for me when I wanted to discuss Zoe before we even started shooting. He was really awesome when we got to rehearse before we started shooting scenes. We ran through everything with Jason and I and Ed and I before we started filming, which is a gift. And he really listened to us. And then on set, he really takes care of the technical part. He knows as an editor, like how he wants it to be, how the shots to be edited together. And he has a very clear image in his head. And and he still is present for you as an actor, but we got to do so much of that beforehand, so he's been able to play both parts very solidly, and so that's been nice, because sometimes you have someone who is, you know, more strong in one field or the other, but we were able to get deep before stepping onto set, which was really helpful. Jason, he's horrible too. He's just awful. He's a horrible person. Very fun, very smart. He and I talk about news articles all day. And very, very, very intellectual, and also funny. And it was fun to get to have our their verbal battles, or their witty moments together, Zoe and Matt. And I really feel like, because we are sitting around waiting all day chatting as opposed to, you know, going into our separate places, that all helps when you're on camera, and it's supposed to look like there's chemistry just because people are able to listen and respond and be playful. And it was really fun getting to improvise a bit with him in those scenes. Most of the time when we would do it, Mark would then ask us to do a take where we don't do it. But it was at least amusing.